Welcome to the Better Life podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, building wealth, and all in all, living a better life. My name is Brandon Turner, and I've spent my life investing in real estate to achieve financial freedom. We want to help you do the same. So on this show, you're going to hear from world-class guests who have been handpicked to help you level up your investing, your leadership, your goals, your habits, and more to become the very best version of yourself. So join us as we explore the habits, the actions, the beliefs that it takes to build wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me today on this Financial Freedom Hour. Today, I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that is scaling into big deals rapidly. You know, majority of people go, when they try to get into real estate, they go buy a single family house, and then they buy maybe another single family, then another one a few years later. And over the course of 10 or 20 years, 30 years, they acquire a handful, maybe 5, 10, 15 houses, or maybe they threw in a duplex or triplex in there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to build wealth through real estate. You know, you buy just a handful of properties and you wait 30 years and you're going to have a pretty nice looking net worth. But that's not the only path in real estate, right? There are more ways to build wealth than that in real estate. And so today I want to talk about a different approach, a more aggressive approach. In fact, part of this is kind of inspired by, when I thought of this topic, it's kind of inspired by Grant Cardone. So Grant Cardone, you know, love him or hate him. He doesn't care. He just likes that you know him. Love him or hate him. Grant Cardone has this advice, is don't ever buy a piece of real estate that's less than, I think, 30 units. That's what he pushes out there. Now, I don't always agree with that. Again, I don't like telling people you should or shouldn't do this. Like, you live your life. I'm going to give you whatever information I can. But Grant does have a really valuable point in that a person who could buy a single family house could also buy a 30-unit apartment complex. I really believe that. If you have the mental fortitude, intelligence, work ethic to buy a rental house, which is a tremendous amount of work, you could also buy a large apartment complex or a large industrial property or a large self-storage or a large mobile home park or something bigger. The truth is, we typically go for the smaller, cheaper deals because we feel more comfortable there, not because we're only capable there, right? So that's the first point I want to make sure we're all on the same page around is going big has a lot less to do with ability than it does comfortability. Is comfortability a word? It is today. So, and I like that Grant pushes people that way. Again, I actually think the best approach, if I had to pick an approach for people, is what I teach and I call the stack. The stack says, hey, I might start small. I might start with that duplex because I know I can buy the duplex. I feel comfortable there. And I'm going to make mistakes. And then I'm going to, after I buy the duplex, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow. And next time I'm going to buy a 4-unit or maybe a 5-unit, like, you know, double it or a little bit more than double it every time. So a 2 to 4, then maybe a 4 to a 10-unit or an 8-unit or a 12-unit. And then maybe from that to a 20-unit, and maybe from that to a 50 and a 50 to 100. So over the course, if you just did one of those per year, within 5 years, you'd have over 100 units just by doubling every year. But you're never going crazy, right? Think about it. If you bought the duplex this year, next year you bought a 4-plex, how many units do you have total? 6. All right, so if the next year you bought an 8-unit, it's not like you're going that crazy. You went 2, 4, 8. You already own 6 units, so it's not like you're not going nuts here. You're just going from 6 to and adding 8 more. So I like the idea of the stack because it scales you up. Now, could you start with the 50-unit? I believe you can, and I'm going to talk about some of the ways that you can do that today. Again, I'll start with the big one right here. I generally do not advise that newbies start with giant deals by themselves. The reason why is because has anybody ever done a real estate deal here listening to this or watching this? Like, you've done real estate, right? Have you ever made a mistake, ever? Anybody? Raise your hand if you made a mistake. Yes, me too. I mean, when I look back on like some of my early deals, I mean, even current deals, but when I look at my early deals, well, let's just say my very first duplex I ever bought. I lived in one unit, rented the other ones out. And then I had a rehab budget of like $12,000. I thought I could do it for that. I spent like $25,000, over time on that property. Well, if you double your budget on a $12,000 rehab, that's a hard month. You know, you got to do some work. You might have to pay off some credit card. It sucks a little bit. If you double your budget, like you spend twice as much as you budgeted for on a $12 million rehab, and all of a sudden now you spent $24 million on a rehab, that's a much bigger problem. And so this is where I've disagreed with Grant, is I don't think it's necessarily the best idea to go and do these massive projects up front. Unless, and this is the really important point, unless you are working with someone who has already done those mistakes and made that, and you can glean and borrow from their expertise. So let's just say you want to get started. You say, you know what, I've done a couple small deals here and there, but I want to buy a 50 unit. Well, why don't you go find somebody who's done around a 50 unit and go partner with them? And now you might be wondering why they would partner with you. It's because if you bring them a deal, you bring them an opportunity, why would they not partner with you? I mean, 50% of a great deal is better than 100% of nothing. So like, even if you came to me and you're like, I locked up this 120 unit mobile home park, and I looked at it and I'm like, geez, that's a really good deal. Why would I not partner with you? Now, I would want some control because I'm the one with the experience. And so I'd say, well, I got to run this thing. But I'm going to give you a sizable chunk of the GP because, I mean, not that I'm saying I'm going to give everyone 50% who brings me a deal, but if you lock the deal up and I can't take it anyway, it's better for me to get 50% than to get nothing. Like if you were like, no, I want half the GP on this. GP, by the way, for those who don't know the terminology, is when you do a big syndication like what I do where I raise money, the people who put the deal together are general partners, GP. The people who bring the money that they invest in the deal, those are limited partners or LP. So I would very likely give you you have a great negotiation standpoint because you own the deal. And the deal is the hardest thing to find today. So when I say that when I would teach people you shouldn't start with big deals, I mean you shouldn't start with big deals alone. But if you can work with someone, or maybe you're part of a team and you're just an employee even, or a minor partner, who cares? If it gets you into that earlier. And so, yeah, don't be afraid of those bigger deals if you're willing to work with someone who has the experience, has the expertise that maybe you didn't have. So, knowing that, I want to talk about a few more. I got maybe, what do I have? Six official tips besides that one. That's like tip number 1. So we have a total of 7 tips today. So let's just burn through them and then we'll get everyone out of here in an hour or so. Like I said, I am recording this live here on Financial Freedom Hour. So if you have questions or you're like, oh, I don't understand what you just said, Brandon, you guys that are live watching this, go ahead and put that in the chat area. I'll try to check it frequently and make sure that I'm not missing anything. So, all right, y'all ready for this? Bum, 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 bum. All right, here we go. Let's talk. Let me go to this camera. Look at that fancy camera switching. Everyone say hi to Carson today, by the way. Carson's, you can't see him, but Carson's back that way. He's pressing the button, switching me today. All right. Let's talk a little bit about one of my favorite keynote speeches that I've ever given. And that is on this idea. I did it I think it was at BP Con 3 years ago. I started leaned into it, and I've kind of not perfected. I'm a long way from perfected, but I've been working this framework for the last few years. So you may have heard me talk about it before, but I don't think, but most people haven't fully internalized it. I mean, even I was talking to a friend today who does hundreds and hundreds of real estate deals, and he was just like, man, I love hearing that, Brandon, just like, how do I get to that higher level? Like, it was like, even people doing a lot of deals, it's good for them to hear. So here's the idea. I call it the 4 mindset levels of leadership. It's kind of a lame, generic term. Maybe I'll come up with a better one for it someday. But here's what I mean by the 4 mindset levels. When I talk about mindset, I'm talking about the way that you approach a problem, the way that your mind goes to work solving a problem. So most entrepreneurs have one of 4 mindsets, ways they solve problems when they're going to build a business. And this is directly applicable to the topic today of how do you start with a big monster deal, like a big thing, 50 unit, 100 unit, whatever. A lot of entrepreneurs, they come from the world of a job, a W-2. So maybe they, like, for example, I worked at Cold Stone Creamery. I scooped ice cream. I was just a frontline worker. I scooped ice cream. I did what I said I was going to, I showed up when they told me to show up. I did what they said to do. I sang for tips and all that. So I was the worker bee, right? So when you are a worker bee and you start an entrepreneurial business of any kind, like maybe you're going to go start a bakery, maybe you're going to go and sell, essential oils door to door. I don't know, whatever you're going to do and you're going to start a business. Most people start at level 1. Level 1 is called DIY. You can write that down. DIY. DIYers think that the solution to their problems is to do it themselves. So they're going to go out and do the thing. So if they're starting real estate, they're going to go out there and analyze every deal. They're going to go out there and make every offer. They're going to go out there and learn everything there is to learn. They're going to do all of the steps themselves. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to grow a business. You know everything. You're the expert. You're the master. Like you define the industry, like your business. So why not do it yourself? It's great. It's a great way to do it. However, every level has a limit. Write that down. Every level has a limit. So if you're doing, let's go to an easy example of doing like the BRRRR strategy, right? We're going to buy a property and basically flip it, but instead of selling it, we're going to keep it as a rental. So you're going to buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So you're the DIYer, you go and buy a house, and then you do all the work to find it, to negotiate it, to land the deal. You're the one talking to the bank. You're doing everything. Then you go and you fix it up. You're doing all the work, the construction, all the processes. You go to refinance it. You're getting the refi. You rent it out. You're the landlord. You get everything all yourself. How many of those can you do in a given year? In 1 year's time? 1, maybe 2. That's about it. Maybe 3 if you're a really fast construction worker or the properties aren't that bad of condition. So that's level 1, DIY. The next level is what I call project manager level. So think of a project manager as somebody who doesn't necessarily swing the hammer, but they're on the job site. They're saying, okay, I'm going to make sure that the frontline workers, the worker bees, they're going to be showing up and doing their job, but I'm just managing everything. I'm moving people around. I'm making sure they show up. Project manager is actually an official title in a lot of careers, right? Like many of you might actually at your job be a project manager. And they're like one line up from the people doing the work. So if you're working in tech, you might be the guy doing the code. You're the writing code every day. You're the whatever coder, or you could be the project manager who's making sure the coders are doing their work. And you're still involved, you're still there, but you're project managing. It's another great mindset. You can do more projects that way because now all of a sudden you're managing other people. You're calling, you got a property manager watching the property. You have contractors fixing it up. You're still calling the contractor, but you're dealing with problems by getting random people to do the work. A lot of third parties, a lot of 1099 contract basis to do the work. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's probably better than being the frontline worker sometimes, but sometimes people just like doing the work themselves, and that's cool too. But remember, every level has a limit. So the next level, if you want to elevate yourself and to do more deals, and it's all mindset. This is not very tactical in that anybody can choose a mindset level. So the third one I call the COO, because in a company, a COO is somebody who runs the entire company from an operations standpoint. Like you could call it a CEO, but I like COO because COOs typically are the ones that are they're defining the systems and the processes. They're building a machine. A COO is building a machine. But they are also a part of the machine. They're meeting with their directors. They're meeting with their project managers regularly. They're meeting with their teams. They're setting the budget. They're saying, here's what we stand for in this company, and here's how we're going to get there. And I'm meeting with you every week. They're still part of the machine. Again, nothing wrong with it. And the COO level is probably the max level most entrepreneurs ever get to. They are working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours in their business every single week. And they're growing. They got employees. They're not doing the work. They can even take a few days off. They can go golfing because they got more freedom. Their employees are working. So if they want to sleep in one day or they're sick, the work still gets done because they're not the ones doing the work. They're not even the ones managing the individual workers because they got project manager levels. And this applies exactly to real estate. Same thing. Let's say you wanted to do the BRRRR strategy. Again, if you're the frontline worker, you're doing everything, you're DIY. You're project manager, you're hiring contractors, you can do maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 deals a year because you're just moving people around and shuffling around and stuff, but it's working. All of a sudden, when you're the COO, though, you built a company. You have employees. You have a company culture. Maybe you have an office. Maybe you have some cohesive machine you're built, and you're at the top of the machine. You're running the machine. You're tweaking it constantly. The fourth level, though, one higher than that again, most entrepreneurs probably never get to, I call the architect. The architect is somebody who designs the machine. They envision the machine. They inspire the machine and the people that work in the machine. But this is the big difference. They are not part of the machine. They're not even part of it. I mean, other than maybe just some tweaking from the outside, but they're not involved at all. Now, let me tell you in real life why this is important and why I'm talking about it today when it comes to big deals, is because it's going to be very, very hard to do big deals if you're operating at a DIY level. It's going to be hard to do it if you're operating at a project manager level. You need to approach big deals with either that COO mindset of I'm going to build a company, or the architect that I'm going to have a machine. I'm going to have a company that is going to then do real estate. So when I first got into real estate, I was DIYer. My wife and I did everything. We fixed up units, we rented out the properties, and I don't regret it. It was a great time. But then we became my project manager level mindset when we hired my wife's mom. That's right. I hired my wife's mom and I asked her for just 5 hours a week, can I pay you to answer phones? Because I don't like talking to tenants. Anybody here love talking to tenants? I can't stand it. I go, I'm a pushover. And so they're like, I've got this 800-pound Rottweiler that bit 4 kids last week. Can I move it in? I'm like, sure. What day can I help you move the dog in? Like, I'm a bad landlord. All right. My wife is much better, but she just didn't like doing it. I just gave everybody whatever they wanted, and I wanted to love everybody. And, so I had to learn not to talk to tenants. That's not my strength. I'm just too nice. So we hired her mom. I'm now project manager. She's frontline worker. And guess what? All of a sudden she started telling all the people, no, you can't have an 800-pound dog like that bites kids. That's not allowed. And I didn't have to be the bad guy. She gets to be the bad guy, but she loved it. She actually still does it to this day. I mean, here we are 15 years later. She's still doing that, answering phones, talking to her tenants. It's great. So from project manager, I got into kind of a COO sort of role. And almost like when I built Open Door Capital, that's kind of the approach I took, was like, I'm just going to build a machine. I'm going to hire this person and this person and this person and this person and this person. And I defined the machine. We'll talk about that in a little bit, what that actually looks like at a tactical level. But I was at the top of the machine. I was still running all the meetings the first year. I was very much involved and I was just in charge. But guess what? I do not like being that role. I would rather be a DIYer than a COO. I just don't like running all these meetings and making everyone show up on time and being the guy that runs the machine. I don't like it. So then I took myself out. I put myself on the board of directors. I brought in a COO, and the COO is incredible. He's a great dude. His name is Walker Meadows. And Walker is so good because he loves those things that a COO should love, like the meetings, and now he's CEO, but same point. He loves the meetings. He loves holding people accountable. He loves having systems and processes and having conversations with people. So now I get to lead as more of the visionary or the architect. So I get to say, this is what I want the machine to look like. Walker, go make it. And all of a sudden, when I did that is when Open Door Capital scaled from just doing nothing to like 13,000 units, which we're right about right now, is because all of a sudden I got into the right role for me, which was being the architect, being the design person. So that's where we're at today is I'm the architect. When I built the BetterLife Tribe, I built it as both an architect. I'm 2 roles, right? I'm the architect. I was like, this is a business I want to have. I'm not CEO. I'm not CEO. Maybe I am CEO, but I'm not COO. I'm not involved in the day-to-day necessarily. From day one, I'm going to build this thing from the outside looking in. But I'm also the DIYer in some positions. I'm teaching Financial Freedom Hour every single week, or just about every week, as long as I'm not, on vacation or something. I'm teaching. I'm here because I love this. I love the DIY stuff. I love the DIY. I love being there, helping people, being boots on the ground. Like, it's fun. So again, no level is wrong, but every level has a limit. Honestly, we could probably do 5 calls a week in the tribe, 10 calls a week, 20 calls a week if there were other people leading all these calls. But right now, it's just me leading these calls for the most part because I like doing it. I think that's fun. I like leading these calls and helping people, but we'd probably be able to have a lot more effective education if we had more people. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that point in the future. We'll have more people coming in, but all right. Let's see. I'm getting a weird message to start AI Companion. I'm going to allow it, so I don't know what that exactly does, but we're going to find out. All right, let's move on to kind of the next point, because we'll come back to this over and over today, but I want to make sure we cover this idea of I'll summarize it with this point. If you want to do big deals, if you want to grow rapidly, you have to grow what is in here, in your brain. Your mindset matters more than the tactics. It really does. Your mindset matters more. And so the next point related to that is a quote that a friend of mine said to me one time. He said, Brandon, when I was talking about getting nervous about buying my first mobile home park, he said, Brandon, don't be afraid of commas and zeros. That's a shout out to Darren Sager. He goes, don't be afraid of commas and zeros. That's all they are. It's the same exact business. It's just a different way of looking at it. Like it's almost mostly fear. Like it's mostly, again, not capability. It's just, you have the capability of doing bigger deals. You're just afraid to do them. I'm too comfortable in the small deals. So don't be afraid of commas and zeros. It is actually about the same amount of work for me to buy a 100-unit apartment building as it is for me to buy a duplex. In fact, it's more work today for me to buy a duplex than a 100-unit apartment complex. Now, how is that possible? It's because to buy an apartment complex, a big deal, there's a lot of people involved. Now, I'm not saying overnight, it takes work to get to that point, but it's easier because there's so many more people, and people are just, what do you want to call them? They're just like higher paid professionals. Like I'm not dealing with some like crappy attorney from that also does divorces and bankruptcies to help me buy some real estate deal that's a duplex that I just happen to find in my small town. I'm dealing with like Mauricio, who is actually going to come and teach on a financial freedom call soon, who's like one of the top syndication attorneys in the country. And the guy is legit. It's like I'm dealing with Mauricio. What a great experience to deal with a guy like that just knows what he's doing. I'm not dealing with a tax 1, 2, 3 at local Walmart. I'm dealing with Amanda Hahn, who deliberately specifically only works with real estate investors. It's just the level of professionals you work with. It's so much better when you go into bigger deals, and you have staff. I have a team that can do it. So it's actually easier. And people said this when I interviewed over 500 people over on the Bigger Pockets podcast over the course of 10 years. And from almost every single big investor, guys doing big deals, they all said the same thing. And I almost didn't believe them. I knew in my head it was true, but I didn't really believe it in my heart until I got there. It is easier to do big deals than small deals because there's just more people involved. And so everyone has their own role, and those people in those roles are really, really good. So understand that it's, again, fear that holds us back from doing bigger deals oftentimes. And there's a couple other bottlenecks I'll get to in just a minute. But I want to share one more story. This is not necessarily about doing bigger deals, but about doing volume deals. There's a guy I interviewed on the podcast. I can't remember his name. It was years ago. Kevin, that was his name, Kevin Carroll. I interviewed him on Bigger Pockets years and years and years ago. His first year flipping houses, his very first year, he went from 0 to 100 deals his first year. Ironically, my friend Cameron Cathcart. Do you guys know Cameron? Anybody know Cameron? You guys follow Cameron on Instagram at all? So a little note, I'm actually going to surprise everyone with this. And if you're listening to this as a podcast in the future, you probably already know this. But Cameron's actually stepping up to become my co-host of the Better Life podcast. So he's going to be co-hosting those episodes with me because I really miss just having a co-host to talk with like I did with Josh and David. So Cam has the very similar story. He went from 0 to 100 deals his first year. In fact, we just recorded a podcast with him about that, how he did that. But I'll go back to my friend Kevin Carroll, who I interviewed, a decade ago. And when I asked Kevin on the podcast, how did you go from 0 to 100? Most people go to 0 to 1 or 2 deals their first year. He said, well, all my friends were doing 100 deals a year. And so I didn't know that's not how you're supposed to do it. And I love that answer, right? I didn't know that's not how you're supposed to do it. I didn't know that wasn't normal to just buy 100 deals. Because everyone in his world was doing 100 deals. It's kind of like if all of a sudden you became a friend, let's say you had never run before. You weren't a marathon runner or anything. You never run ever in your life. And all of a sudden you just become friends with people and they just regularly run marathons every quarter. They just love marathon running. Within 6 months, you'd probably be running a marathon. Even though most people take 20 years to get to that point to run a marathon, you probably just do it in a few months because it's not capability. Again, I'll say that over and over. It's not capability, it's comfortability. It's fear. So if you get around people, this is where I'm going with that one. If you get around people who do big deals, you're going to do big deals. I mean, when I joined a group of high net worth millionaire real estate investors a number of years ago, GoBundance. Many of you guys have heard of it. I joined that group, and there were guys in there. It's not all real estate investors; it's all sorts of people. But I joined GoBundance, and there were guys in there that were doing just massive apartment complexes. I'm like, man, I could never do that. And then all of a sudden, within a few years, I was doing that. It's like, I remember one time David Osborne, who's one of my mentors, some guy I really look up to a lot in life, one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever known. David was on stage and he said, yeah, I'm raising $100 million fund right now. And it's going to be a multi-year project, but I'm going to raise $100 million to go out and buy a bunch of single-family houses. And my mind was blown. How could a human being raise $100 million, even in the course of several years? How could anybody do that? That is insane. Like, I can barely raise like $1 million, right? Like, I can even raise like $500,000. I just got shot down from two of my friends when I tried to raise like a couple $100,000, and they're like, sorry. And I just felt stupid. And here this guy's raising $100 million. Less than 2 years later, I raised $120 million in 8 weeks. $120 million in 8 weeks I did. Like, that would not have been possible had I not heard David Osborne say he is going to raise $100 million. You become like the people you associate with. It's not capability, right? It's not capability. All right. The other thing in regards, and we'll move on to those bottlenecks, but in regards to this is the process is the exact same. To go back to the don't be afraid of commas and zeros, that's the only difference between buying an apartment complex or a mobile home park or a large self-storage facility or a big warehouse complex or whatever. The exact same process exists. Real estate, this is what's fun about real estate. It's all the same. It's like, what do we do to go buy? Let's go talk about single family houses. What would we do if we wanted to go buy a single family house? Well, we got to have a way to get funded. So we got to have a down payment of some kind. Well, how do we buy a $100 million apartment complex? You got to have money. You got to have a down payment. Now, if some things change, it might not be your down payment. But even on single family houses, has anybody ever borrowed money from somebody like a partner or a family member in order to buy a rental property? Anybody ever done that? I did that all the time in the beginning. I'd go buy, hey, can I borrow $20,000? We'll partner together. I'll give you half the deal, but I need the down payment. Okay. Same exact concept for the big deals. All right, well then what about, so that's kind of the money side, is I just partner with people to bring the down payment and we get a bank loan. Well, what about finding deals? Well, if I need to go find a single family house or a duplex, triplex, what am I going to do? I'm going to get a real estate agent or broker. I'm going to look at a whole bunch of deals and I'm going to run the numbers on them. Well, how do I buy a $100 million apartment complex? I'm going to go get a broker. It works a little different in that, like, in the residential world, you get yourself like an agent to represent you. In the commercial world, in the bigger deals, typically you don't have an agent to represent you. You just go to the seller's agent. It's like one agent in the transaction, typically, not always, but typically. So we work with the seller's agent. So I don't have an agent representing just me. Like they're going to try to make sure I pay the most amount of money possible. So again, there's nuanced differences, but the process is exactly the same. Due diligence, same. Mortgages, the way that mortgage terminology works, pretty much the same. Again, slight nuances here and there. The business is the same. If you can buy a single family house, you can buy a $100 million apartment complex. I sound like that guy from Dodgeball, right? If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a dodgeball. It's exactly like that. Again, there are limitations, of course. There are differences, little nuances. You will learn them as you get into it, which again goes back to my earlier advice of, if you can partner with someone who already is doing that thing or has maybe done most of that thing, like let's say you find somebody who's been really good in the like 40, 50, 60 unit space, like they've been buying 40 or 50 unit apartment complexes, and you come in and you're like, hey, let's go buy a 100 unit. Now there's, almost no difference between a 50 unit and a 100 unit, other than it's easier and more expensive. Which is weird to say, but there's the most difficult real estate investment, like, whatever you call it, niche, I guess you could call it, is that, like, I think it's that 10 to 70 unit apartment building range. 10 to 70 units. Why is that so difficult? I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'll come to that in a little bit. Maybe that's exactly what you should be doing. But I found a lot of difficulty in that like 20, 30, 40, 50 unit space because it's not quite big enough to have a professional third-party management company watch over it. Like you're probably dealing with a resident manager who you find and you got to manage, and they're probably just somebody who's living for free there in exchange for helping you out. Because you can't afford a full-time handyman, so you're still calling contractors when you need something done versus somebody who lives on site and they just work 40 hours a week for you. So there's an economy of scale you get when you get over 100 units. That's actually why Open Door Capital, we don't buy anything under 100 units. We won't buy an apartment complex or a mobile home park that has fewer than 100 lots or 100 units. Why? I want the economies of scale. The only exception would be if I was buying like 3 properties in one area that all had like 50 units. Okay, now we can share the staff, but I want staff, ideally. I want people there full-time who can handle the bigger properties. So, yeah, the process is so similar. But let's say you go back to the partnership thing. Let's say you find someone who can do the 40, 50, 60 units. You take them to the 100 unit and you just start going out there and you use their credibility and expertise to build relationships with brokers who can find that style of deal. And at the end of the day, finding deals, big deals, is the same process as it is finding small deals. I mean, I've been teaching this online for 10 years. Today, I call it the luck funnel. So draw a little triangle on a piece of paper, it's not like a V, letter V, a giant letter V. It's a funnel, right? At the top, you're going to get leads that come in. So L is at the top of the funnel, leads that come in. What's a lead? Somebody who wants to sell their property. So leads come in the top. Next, you have to underwrite those leads. You have to underwrite them. What does underwrite mean? It means to run the numbers, but it's more than just the numbers. You got to run the numbers. You got to look at the economy. You got to look at the market. You got to look at what's going on in the area. You got to look at what the interest rates are at. So that's why it's not just called analysis. It's called underwriting. You're going to look at the whole picture and say, how much can I pay for this deal to make it a deal? Like, how much can I pay for this property in order for me to want to buy it and be able to sell it to investors or however you're going to raise the money to buy this deal? So L is for leads, U is for underwriting, C is for compete. You have to compete for the deal, especially in these bigger deals. That's one big difference is you're not likely going to find a massive deal that's being sold by, I shouldn't say that because we buy big deals from mom and pops. But a lot of times you're going to deal with a broker, which means you're dealing with multiple people bidding on the same property. So you're going to have to compete for that deal. And even if it's just you have to negotiate and get the seller, even if it's a mom and pop, to sell to you. You have to compete. You have to show them why you're the best. Why are you worthy of their property? So LUC, and then finally the K stands for keys. If you do the LUC long enough, you're going to get the keys eventually. It's a funnel. So LUCK, luck. And I love telling people, the secret to success in real estate is just luck. That's all it is, luck. And like, what do you mean luck? LUCK, leads, underwrite, compete, and get the keys. So it's like this. If you got 5 leads every year of properties that, let's say you got 100 leads a year that came in, just properties in your area that were for sale, that were pretty decent. Every year, 100 leads, a dozen or so a month, or, 8 a month. Out of those 100 leads every year, you go and you underwrite about half of them. Let's say half of them, you're just like, no, I won't even touch that. Bad area, bad property, doesn't fit what I'm looking for, whatever. That's fine. So you got 100 leads, you underwrite 50 of them. Out of the 50, how many are you going to go compete for? Maybe 5 of them, maybe 10% of them. You're going to go compete for maybe 20% of them. I don't know. Let's just say you make a dozen offers. How many of those are going to be accepted and you're going to close on it and get the keys? 1. Maybe if you're lucky, at most. So it's a giant funnel. You get 100, 50, 10, 1, let's just say. So when I built Open Door Capital, I simply said, let's just add some zeros. That's all it was. We're just going to add some zeros. So instead of getting 100 leads a year, how do we get 1,000 leads every year? How do we get 10,000 leads every year? And what they say is ask better questions, you get better answers. So instead of like, how do I find a deal this year? We're saying, how do I find 20 deals this year? Well, you just got to reverse engineer it. So we're going to get a lot more leads, a lot more underwriting, a lot more competition. And well, in order to do that, you're going to have some staff. We'll talk about staff here in a little bit. But you build a machine. That's what your machine is. In fact, I love this question. Write this down. This might be one of those powerful questions you could ever ask yourself. And I would love if you guys took this question and went and sat down for an hour or two in silence and just reflected on this question, because this will change your life. This is the question. What system could you create that would make success inevitable? What system could you create or could be created so that success is inevitable? Let me give you a real stupid example, and then I'll give you a more realistic real estate one. Let's say you're single. You are single right now and you really want to get married someday. You just really want to have a significant other. What system could be created? And by a system, I mean a set of processes, repeatable, scalable processes that produce a result that you want. That's a system. So what system or systems could be created so that success that you would get married almost for sure? Well, if you went on, again, and I love the idea of starting with the ridiculous. What would guarantee that you find the person of your dreams? Well, if you spent 10 hours a day on dating apps, and you were in 15, 20, 30 different cities on those dating apps, and you were sending messages to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people every single day. Now, of course, you wouldn't actually do this, but that's not the point of the mental exercise. It's what would guarantee success. Okay, well, if you were doing that 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day of sending messages, hundreds every day, you were going on dozens and dozens of dates every week. I mean, you had breakfast dates, lunch dates, dinner dates. You were just doing dates every single day. At the same time, you were also doing another system, a system of self-improvement, in which every day you listen to a self-improvement podcast. You listen to another podcast on how to talk to women or men or whoever you're interested in. And you were taking classes on etiquette and looking better. I don't know, grooming and smelling good, whatever, right? So if you were doing that consistently, working on yourself, and you had 20 dates a week, over the course of a 12-month period, would you find one person out of that group that would probably be your soulmate? The odds are, I think you would, right? Unless you're a real weirdo. Like you'd probably, with that level of intensity, it would be impossible not to find somebody. Okay, so now you take that frame of that thought and say, okay, well, if that's not reasonable, what is reasonable? What's a reasonable approach to getting that person? Well, okay, but I'm not going to go on a dating app and get, 20 dates a week. What if I did 2 dates a week? What if I set a goal and said, I'm going to get 2 dates every week? Well, how would I get 2 dates every single week? Well, I'd probably have to send about 30 messages every single week. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, what if I hired a virtual assistant? And I say this is a joke, but a friend of mine actually does this. He hired a virtual assistant to run his Tinder and Hinge and all that. And the virtual assistant goes and sends like 50 messages a week to people. And the virtual assistant has conversations with these women. It's terrible. And then the ones that prove to be maybe like, oh, this could be a good fit, then they go on a date together and my friend actually shows up. So he doesn't have to waste his time with the lead part. He just gets the leads in his inbox and he goes out and analyzes those deals. It's silly, but it illustrates this point that with almost everything in life, there is a system that could deliver the results you want. It might be too hard, it might be ridiculous, but there is some way. And then once you do that exercise of saying what would guarantee success, you can work into what's reasonable. And many times, the ridiculous system is actually the system that you need to build. And you're going to figure out, you're like, oh, actually, that is kind of silly, but I mean, how bad do I want success? And then you start asking, well, how would I build that system? How would I build a system in which I could do 100 offers every single month? Right now, that's impossible for you, most likely to do 100 offers a month. How would you build that system, though? You reflect on that for a couple hours, and you are going to have a lot of answers and a lot of clarity on that. And so that's like, I call it like the one question, like what's the one system you can build? It's like the one thing, but it's the one question, right? The system you can build that makes success inevitable. So I did that with Open Door Capital. I simply said, we want to buy $50 million of real estate. How many offers are we going to have to make? Out of that, how many deals do we have to analyze? Out of that, how many leads do we have to have? And I just worked out a system and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to need some help. And then I built the team. We'll get to the team here in just a little bit. Now, why don't we get to it now? I'll jump forward and then I'll come back to what I was going to talk about. So at that point, so the next tip is I wrote down is, and you can write this down for the next kind of key tip today, play a team sport. So if you want to do big deals right away, if you want to scale up rapidly, you have to get out of the idea that you are playing, pickleball by yourself against a wall, and you are playing basketball with a team of 5 other people or 4 other people or whatever. You're playing baseball with a group of 9. You are now a team. You have a role, they have a role, everyone has a role, and everyone's designed to be perfect at their role. And this is, remember I said earlier, it's easier to buy a 100-unit apartment complex than a single-family house. It can be largely because each person in the organization is both incredible at that role. They're designed by God for that role. Like, in other words, their personality fits it exactly, and they love that role. Like, it's just perfect. And so you get people in each of those roles. So here's the kind of the 4-step framework for building a team. You ready? Number 1, establish your vision of where you're headed. The world craves leaders with vision. Like the world craves, like there's nothing worse than following a leader who doesn't know where they're going, right? They're just like blindly walking around. I would rather have a leader just boldly say where they're going than to just be like, I don't know, we're just kind of figuring things out. Like, I want decisiveness in a leader, even if it's the wrong choice. Because nobody really knows the right choice. I just want somebody who's more like, this is where we're headed as a group. So when I started Opener Capital, I'm like, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate over the next 3 years. And everyone's like, yeah, we are. And it's like, you guys, let me be honest here. I had no idea how I was going to do that. I had no idea how I was going to buy $50 million of real estate. I didn't know if that's the right number. Should it have been 40? Should it have been 20? Should it have been 100? I don't know. I was just like, I just picked a number and I'm like, let's do that number. And I just acted confident. There's a great quote from Kurt Vonnegut that says, he's an author, who says, we must be careful of what we pretend to be because we become what we pretend to be. And it's like, I was like, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate. Let's go. And the first person I showed that to was Ryan Murdoch, who was a good friend of mine. He actually lives in my backyard. He still does. I showed Ryan my vision. I said, we're going to buy $50 million of real estate. We're going to buy 1,000 units in mobile home parks. And he goes, I want to be a part of that. Because people, again, the world craves leaders with vision. There's a Bible verse about that. It's like where people perish where vision lacks or something like that. It's like, it's in Proverbs, I think. It's like we crave vision, the end. People do. Even like when I go to a shoe store, I don't want the shoe salesman going, I don't know, there's a lot of shoes in here. I mean, I don't know. There's lots of them. Which one do what one? I want them to go, this is the shoe I'm going to sell you because this is the best shoe for your foot because I know your foot. I know you. I know what you want. This is the shoe. And I'd be like, sell me that shoe. I'll pay any amount, right? I want a leader who tells me what to do. We all want that decisiveness sometimes, even if we don't admit it. So build that vision and start talking about it everywhere you go. I like a 5-year vision, 3 to 5. You can go 5 if you want. I did 3 originally. 3 to 5 year vision that this is what we're going to buy. This is why in the BetterLife Tribe, a big component of the tribe and what we do every quarter and every year when we do our annual is the idea of the 5-year future you. Who do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want we have a real estate version of it. What do you want your real estate to look like in 5 years? And get real clear on what that is. Where do you buy? What do you buy? How much do you have? Why do you do it? Where are you at? What's your team look like? So you start telling people, this is what I'm doing. And you act with confidence and everyone's like, all right, here we go. And then it just works. It's like magic. It's crazy. All right. So establish your 5-year vision. That's number 1 on Play a Team Sport. Number 2, establish your company's culture. And that's largely through your core values. Now for years, I railed against core values. Like people talk about core values. I'm like fluffy corporate jargon nonsense. Like I wear sweatshirts. I don't wear a suit. I ain't got no core values, but and that's because I'd been in companies who their core values were like integrity and we work hard and do the best you can do. And it was all just like generic, like you put it on a motivational poster in some like Office Space type of a movie. And it was just silly, right? Didn't mean anything. And then we went through a practice, worked with a consultant to establish core values for Open Door Capital. And it's things like literally one of our core values is no suits. That's one of our core values because I'm like, that's who I am as a person. And my company is a reflection of me as a person. So therefore, I don't want us to wear suits. Like we are a real estate investment company with $1 billion in real estate. And I have not wore a suit other than I went to one date with my wife in Scotland where I bought a thrift shop suit for $12. That's a whole different story. And my wife bought a dress that was the most stunning, beautiful dress she ever seen her in. And it was like $3 at a thrift shop in Scotland. Great night. Anyway, other than that, I don't wear a suit. Haven't worn one in years. And I still bought $1 billion of real estate. That's a core value. Guess what? Every person we hire, they're not suit people. And in fact, we hired one guy who was a suit person because I'm like, he's the best. He's really good. He lasted like 3 months. He didn't fit with our culture. I love the guy. He just didn't fit with the culture and what we had going. So that's all right. Core value is established so that you know how to hire and fire people by a standard. This is the standard we operate in. So you have your vision and now you have your culture. defined largely through your core values, but also just in the way that you interact with people in your culture. And now you want to build out your organizational chart, your org chart. You will need this if you want to do big deals. And a lot of you are like, well, I don't have the money to hire people. Just stick with me for a minute. You don't need money. I did not spend any money on people. To this day, I technically have still never spent any of my own money on any of my staff, and I have 150 employees. So you build your org chart, and in the beginning, it's likely, I don't want to say empty, but it's all you. So an org chart, for those not familiar, an organizational chart is a chart where you list every single role that the company has and who each person reports to. So usually at the top, you got a big circle. And so at the top, you got like this circle, and it probably says CEO, right? You can use different terminology. Below that, you might have COO. In a big corporation, you have a CEO who's more the visionary. You have a COO who's more of the integrator, tactical person. Below the COO, you likely have VPs. Now, you might be thinking, this is crazy, Brandon. I got no employees right now. It's okay. I want you to write out the org chart anyway. There's going to be blank, or they're going to have your name there, because right now these roles exist. This is important. The roles already exist. You just don't have people to fill them yet. But the roles do exist. You're just wearing all the hats different moments of the day. You're running acquisitions, you're running investor relations, you're running finance, you're doing everything. So let's write down an org chart. So you got CEO, COO, and then you got your VPs. Who do you have VP-wise? And I promise you, I did this on that airplane ride where I wrote out my vivid vision for the company, and I showed Ryan. I actually wrote my entire org chart for my 5-year company or 3-year company. I wrote down what would we have to be able to buy $50 million of real estate every year. And so I wrote that down. The org chart, there was VP of acquisitions, because we need somebody that's in charge of buying deals. I said I need a VP of investor relations, because we're going to have to raise money. So I need somebody who can help me raise money. I'm going to need a VP of finance, because there's a lot of money that goes in and out. And again, don't get caught up on the actual role titles. It doesn't matter. It could be director of finance. It doesn't matter. But I had finance, and with finance, I kind of rope in administration and HR. It's kind of like one, like at least in the beginning right now with a fairly small company, it's like finance, admin, HR. That's, by the way, Micah Kabagbag, who lives out here in Maui. He is so good. So good. Then I have asset management. Somebody's got to make sure the properties are performing well and doing a good job. So there's asset management. And so there's these different roles here. Am I missing one there? I feel like that there's like those are the main ones, right? I'm going to buy a deal. I'm going to finance the deal. I got investor relations, for doing that. I got finance. I got asset management. That's maybe the gist of it. And then you might have an administrative assistant in there. And so I have like an admin assistant I made sure to include. Disposition. Somebody wrote down disposition. That is true. In the beginning, I did not have a role for that, but you could definitely write that. And that's just you. If that's, and maybe they're under acquisition. How would you want that? I love the org chart practice. We could spend 2 hours on this, and maybe we will sometime, actually. Would you guys like that in the tribe? Would you guys want like a whole practice where we actually do this together? I find it one of the most helpful things. In fact, I did a thing called the Maui masterclass for a number of years. Maybe I'll bring it back someday, where we fly in 30 investors fly into Maui. We hang out at a hotel for 4 days. This is one of the practices we did at the Maui masterclass. We'd actually write out our org charts, and it was super valuable. So, okay, everyone's saying yes. Okay, I'll make sure to schedule that at some point. So you write out your organizational chart, and now you can look at and by the way, under that, you might have more people. You might spec those out. So under investor relations, I've got a role that says like head of social media. Well, who's the head of social media at Open Door Capital? It's actually still me. I'm still running social media for Open Door Capital just because I like that. So I'm both CEO, or was at the top, and I'm at the bottom as well, and that's totally fine, because in the beginning you're in every single role, and over time you're going to be able to fill all those spots. Now, if you've got a lot of money or a lot of balls, you can go out and just hire all those people on salaries from day one and just manage them. And here's the great thing about having big deals, like doing big deals, is that there's a thing called an acquisition fee. When you buy a $20 million apartment complex, let's just say, there's going to be something called an acquisition fee. It's typically 2% that you're charging to your investors, because you're going to have to raise money for this. We can talk about that maybe later, but you're going to have to raise money for that. you're going to add on a 2% fee. It could be 2.5, could be 1.5, could be 1. That fee would pay for your staff. That's the whole point of it. So if you're buying $20 million property, 2% of 20 million is that 40,000? Am I doing that right? 400,000, 4 million. Yeah. So 10% of 20 million would be 2 million. So yeah, 200,000 would be 1%. So it's $400,000. Am I doing that right? Yeah. So $400,000. Now all of a sudden you can pay for, your staff just by one $20 million apartment building. You can now afford 4 full-time salary people. Like, that's cool. So it's not like that's why I say either you have a lot of money or you have a lot of balls. Cause like it takes a lot of like, oh, I'm going to go and spend $500,000 on salaries and hope that it works out. The other way to do it, which is what I did, because I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of balls to do this. When it came to Open Door Capital, I wasn't sure. Instead, I gave equity. That's the alternative. I brought in partners. Brian Murray. When I brought in Brian Murray took a big chunk of Open Door Capital. He's the second largest shareholder of Open Door Capital besides me. Brian Murray's asset management. He had owned a couple thousand units. I think I could trust him to help manage properties. Originally, I brought in Ryan Murdoch was my original acquisitions, and then later became COO, and then later went to the board of directors, just like Brian and me now. I brought in for underneath Ryan. Then we brought in a guy named eventually who was an intern that we offered equity to, a guy named Walker Meadows. Walker was an intern who got some equity, and then we moved him to director of acquisitions. Then we moved him to VP of acquisitions. Then we moved him to COO, and then a few months ago I promoted him to CEO. He's the head of all Open Door Capital at this point. He's phenomenal, and he worked his way in there, but I didn't pay him a salary in the beginning. He was an intern that got equity. Ryan got equity. Brian got equity. Mike Williams was investor relations. He was not quite intern. Well, I guess he was an intern for a few months. He was an intern with equity, same as Walker. He just did a great job, and then eventually, once we bought our first deal and got that acquisition fee, then I put him on salary. That's why I say I never spent my money on any of it. Now, what did that cost me, though? Over 50% of Open Door Capital, I gave away to my employees. Over 50% is owned by my employees. It will probably, that decision, and this was the best decision I could have ever made, but that decision is a $1 billion decision, because if I would have just kept it all and gave them all salaries, I'd probably end up with another $1 billion at the end of my career. But I don't want it. I would much rather have a team that's aligned. And to be honest, I don't know if we would get there if I didn't align our interests together. Brian wouldn't have done it for a salary. Ryan wouldn't have done it for a salary. And so that's the points that I made so far in Plan a Team Sport. I said, create your vision, establish your company culture and core values, build out your organizational chart. And then the fourth one is give your team a path toward independent wealth for themselves. You have to align. Another way to say that is to align financial interests. So align financial interest is the fourth part here of Plan a Team Sport, is make sure everybody wins. In fact, I want every single person on my team to know that they will make more by being a part of my team than they will by doing it on their own, because of the vision that I have and the systems that I've built, that I believe they will do better with me than on their own. And it's more fun to do it together. It's way more fun to play a team sport than to throw a ball against the wall, right? Like, nobody wants to just like sit there. So huge fan on that. And then the last point, I'll give you a fifth point on play a team sport, and then we'll move on, because I know we got to wrap pretty soon here. And that is this: you have to manage people inside of a system. You have to management is a skill set that most people do not have innately, and you manage inside of a system. So if you have a company with multiple employees, we use a system called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. But it really works when you have lots of employees. I highly recommend it. If you are a solopreneur, we are introducing something heavily this year within the BetterLife Tribe called REIOS, the Real Estate Investors Operating System, which is similar to like EOS or Scaling Up or 4DX, all these systems that manage companies. But it's designed for people who are working by themselves for now, because it's too hard to run those big systems when you just have yourself or one or two employees. So we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks and months. But big fan of that idea of just you have to manage your team, including yourself, within a system. And I don't want to go into all of what that is. We can do a whole financial freedom hour on that at some point, how to manage people, how to be a good leader. But Yeah, system, super, super important. Two more notes on system. And by the way, this is so I talk about playing a team sport. Becoming a leader, that's the next tip here. You have to become a leader. So manage inside of a system, line up goals for the company. So your company has goals, every individual has goals. That's part of what I call is part of REIOS, is the goal alignment method. If you've been in the tribe for a year now or so, or long, a while, you understand what this basically is we have 3-year goals, 1-year goals, quarterly goals, and then we have weekly habits and actions that we track. That you want to line up everybody with goals together toward some success, so some vision. That's goal alignment. Because at the end of the day, this is a quote directly from James Clear from Atomic Habits. He said, "You don't get your goals, you get your systems." Or you get the result of your systems. Or what I say in the tribe all the time, you get the results of what you repeatedly do. You don't get what you want, you get what you repeatedly do. So you want to build scalable systems. A couple good books for that. If you want to write down some good books on system building, probably the best one I've read is The E-Myth Revisited from Michael Gerber. And number 2 would be a book called Work the System by Sam Carpenter. Those are great ones. All right, I got 2 more tips for y'all and we'll get everyone out of here. So probably got about 10 minutes left. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's keep going a little longer if you guys can hang with me. Let's talk about this. When you're going to go into big deals, when you want to buy a big property, a big deal, first of all, there's a lot of competition for big deals, and it's very intelligent competition. What I mean by that is you're not dealing with a bunch of dumb people who've never invested in real estate before and like, oh yeah, if you're just like decent, you're going to be better. No, you have to be good because you're dealing with people like me who have teams of experts who are driving success. So the 3 words I want you to write down for this tip are choose your hard. Choose your hard. Where are you going to focus on getting good at that everyone else is afraid to get good at it? So I'll give you an example. Open Door Capital, our hard, we have a few of them, but one of our hard things is infilling mobile home parks. So that means we buy mobile home parks that are 60 to 70% occupied, that have maybe 30, 40, 50, 100 empty lots that are just empty. Our hard is to fill up those properties. That's incredibly difficult because it's hard to find used homes. It's expensive to buy new mobile homes. People at that price point typically can't buy them from us. So it's like a whole thing. And then how do we get the money to buy these homes that are $70,000 for a mobile home? How do we get the money for it when the tenant can't pay it? All they can do is rent it, but I don't want to rent it to them. It's a hard thing. I don't want to go into it now, but it's hard. So we have about a dozen people on staff just on that one thing. And we can fill between 300 and 400 houses every year now. We're good at it. We're the best in the country. I'm not even I'm not even being egotistical there. We are the best mobile home infill team in the country because we work at it, because we chose our hard. Now, maybe your hard are septic tanks. Maybe your hard is buying dilapidated apartment complexes that are empty and you're filling them up. Maybe your hard is buying properties that are in small towns. Maybe your hard is buying 40-unit apartment complexes because they're so hard to manage. I don't like them. So you're not competing with me because I don't want it. I don't want that hard. That might be your hard. Pick your hard. And really look at these 6 things right here. There's 6 things to focus on when you're really trying to nail down your criteria, what you're going to get good at, what you're going to focus on. I call it the crystal clear criteria. You've heard it before. It is property type. So what type of property you're going to buy? Location. Where are you going to buy? Condition. How nice, how bad do you want it to be? Price range. So I buy between, $5 million and $12 million or $1 million and $3 million. Profitability. In other words, what do I need to get in profit in order for it to be a good deal? Sometimes you want a lot of profit. Sometimes you want less profit. Like some people are like, oh, I just need 6% to be happy. Oh, my investors need 20%. Okay, those are 2 different things. Do you need to know what you need or what your investors need? And then finally, strategy. What are you going to do? Are you doing the BRRRR strategy, like the Big Bird? I call it the Big Bird. It's like where you BRRRR a property, but it's an apartment complex. Big Bird. Get it? No? I think it's fun. I actually made a t-shirt one time. We've never sold it at the BetterLife Tribe, but I want to. And it's like this cartoon character of Big Bird, but he's like stomping through a city. And it just says Big Bird. And bird is spelled BRRRRD. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, depreciate. depreciate as a tax strategy you do on those big deals to pay no taxes. So anyway, giant big bird walking through a city. We're working on it. We don't actually sell any shirts yet. We are going to. We're going to have merch at some point. It's going to be awesome. So if you're listening to this in the future for some reason, you want to see what merch we have, I'll make a URL of like just abetterlife.com/merch, MERCH. Carson, will you help me remember that later too to make that URL? And we have shirts coming at some point. So anyway, and then the last part of that one is, what is your unique value? Like, what do you bring to those deals? Like, why are you good at them? Well, I'm good at the infill stuff because I understand that how systems work in terms of that luck system, and we apply that luck system, leads, underwrite, compete, keys, to every single mobile home we can find. And so we are just mass marketing for mobile homes, both used and new. That's our unique value we bring there. So we choose our hard. We choose why we're going to be good at it. What's our value? We got a really clear, crystal clear criteria, and we know what our hard is. We just go at it. All right, last piece I'm going to talk about here is the 4 bottlenecks to growth. And I've talked about this before, but it's so important to understand. There's really 4 bottlenecks when you're trying to grow any business, but specifically real estate investing that we're talking about today. And the 4 bottlenecks all start with the letter M. So the first one, marketing. Marketing meaning deals, meaning properties. And again, because the same 4 M's apply to any business, it could be anything. Just your customers would be marketing, your deals that come in, whatever. Just marketing is just a general word for like the leads, the deals you get. So number 1, some people have a bottleneck because they just can't find any deals. But it's really just a matter of increasing your marketing, right? Like I said earlier, like what system could you build so that marketing, that leads are never a problem and that it's inevitable you're going to land deals? Okay, so number 1 bottleneck is marketing. How about with tenants? Oh, I got a 20-unit apartment complex and I can't find any tenants for it. Of course there'll be tenants. You have a marketing problem. So you just need to do more marketing to get more tenants. All right, so marketing is the first bottleneck, and it's not really a bottleneck. It's a dial. You just have to apply pressure to it. Number 2, management, or you could call it operations. I'm not talking about just property management, but just management in general. Your ability to execute systems, processes, and people. So management is everything from how do you run your operations to what do you do when a tenant doesn't pay the rent and everything in between. This is management operations of your company. A lot of people struggle with that. But management is not a bottleneck either. It's an educational problem, right? Like you can learn how to be a better manager. There's a million books on it. I teach on this stuff constantly. You can learn how to be a good leader and a good manager. You can implement REIOS. You can implement EOS. You can implement 4DX or scaling up. Management is a process. It's a set of rules that you lack education. Third bottleneck starts with an M, and that is mindset. This is probably I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing holding people back is their mindset just doesn't allow for those type of deals. They've hit a ceiling on their mindset and they have to expand their mindset. They have to think bigger. They have to overcome fear and limiting beliefs and problems. And if your mindset is in the right spot, if your mindset says, no, I'm not a DIYer, I'm a CEO, or I'm an architect, or I'm a visionary, you have a different mindset, you're going to approach a problem differently. When Jay Scott, who wrote the book on flipping houses, started flipping houses, it never even occurred to him to go and like pick up a hammer and start doing work. Why? Because he was a project manager at Google or Microsoft or one of those companies. So when he started flipping houses, he just took that mindset from his last job and moved it into flipping. Now, when I got into flipping, I was scooping ice cream at Cold Stone. So of course my thought was I better go grab a hammer and start doing some work. So mindset is a huge bottleneck, but again, mindset is not really a bottleneck either. Mindset is an education, but I would argue it's more of a identity, consistency, and work kind of a thing. What I mean by that is you can fix your mindset. Anybody can. It's not really a bottleneck. You have full control over your mindset. You have 100% control over your mindset, so it's not stopping you. Being in a group like the BetterLife Tribe, this is designed to improve your mindset. I want you to think differently, and that's why you're here, is to think differently. I'm hoping, mindsets are contagious. There's a good quote for y'all today to go put on Twitter. Mindsets are contagious, both for good and for bad. You get around a bunch of negative people who all they do is watch, the Kardashians and complain about their W-2 job and why their boss won't let them take off an extra day of work. Guess what you're going to become like? Just like them. But if you get around a bunch of people who believe that success is inevitable and that life is meant to be lived in the front seat, not in the back seat, and that you control where you go, and that you deserve to be wealthy, and that you deserve to be happy, and you deserve to be in shape, guess what? You're going to get there too. Mindsets are contagious. And so you surround yourself with people. This is one of the reasons that I keep pushing people to go to our live events. Mindsets are more contagious in person. Do you guys agree with that? Like, have you ever been to an event and like you go there? This is why like church is so important. Honestly, one of the main reasons church is important is because you adopt the mindset of the people at church when you're with, versus like watching digital church. You're not going to get the same thing from the preacher. You get it by real life interaction. So if you can get into a room with people who are at a different mindset, I pay over $100,000 a year to be in rooms with people that have better mindsets than me. It's a big part of my budget is to get into rooms because I know that one of the biggest bottlenecks to my growth is my mindset, and I will never stop working on it. So spend the money to fix your mindset if that's what you got to do. And you already are. I mean, you're in the tribe, so you guys are awesome. The last bottleneck is the only bottleneck. That's a bold statement, right? But I'll say it again. The final bottleneck here, the last M, is the actual only real bottleneck. And that is money, right? You really, if you had, and here's why I argue this point. If you had a good positive mindset and you believed success was possible, which anybody here can adopt, we already know that. And if you were good at operations because you understood how like the book Traction runs or 4 Disciplines of Execution or any of these management books, and you knew how to run a business, which you can learn, and you understand that concept of like the luck funnel where you just apply more pressure and you get more leads, go to more markets. The only thing really holding you back is just your ability to finance them. If I gave you $1 billion in cash today, my guess is you would figure out a way to spend that. You would invest that money. You would find properties. You might have to hire a bunch of employees. You might have to go to a bunch of markets. You might have to do bigger deals, whatever. But the only real limitation that we actually have is our ability to generate money, which is why over the last few weeks, I did that 6-hour masterclass on raising money through your social media, through the internet, and I talked about everything I've done to raise $400 million. So hopefully, I mean, again, you guys are all here watching live, are all tribe members, but if somebody's watching this in the future and you're not a tribe member, join the tribe and watch that. I would argue that 6 hours alone will pay for 10 years of your tribe membership, maybe more. I'm serious. Like if you understand the power of the internet and building a personal brand, 5 years from now, you're going to look back and be like, dang, I'm so glad I made those choices to broaden my brand. You don't have to have 400,000 followers on Instagram and a big podcast to be able to do that. You can start small. A lot of examples of that. So money is the biggest actual bottleneck with the realist. Is that a word? The realist bottleneck we have. And that's why we talk a lot about it. In fact, we have a class, a financial freedom hour coming up here in a few weeks. I think where Cameron and I are going to spend a couple hours. We're going to do an extended financial freedom hour all about raising private money. Cameron buys 100 houses a year now. He did it his first year, but he does it every year. Generally buys about 100 a year. And he uses private money for almost all of it. And so he's going to talk about it. I've raised $400 million of private money from people. We're going to spend a couple hours just digging into what does it look like to raise private money for your deals. And yeah, we'll do one on finding deals eventually too, coming up soon, because I know that stuff is important. So that, my friends, is how to get into big deals. I want to encourage you one more time. Like, you don't have to jump into the big deals. You can scale up if you want to, but understand that it is not a capability problem. You have everything you need to be able to start getting into bigger deals. I want to give you the confidence, though, the mindset to be able to get into those deals. And then we can tactically work through the how-tos and you'll get there. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. Let's do a few minutes of Q&A. I'd love to stick around for a little bit and answer some questions. So if you have any questions at all, throw them in the chat area right now, and I will attempt to answer them. Let me know in the chat area if you have any questions. If not, I'll pretend that you're asking questions. Brandon, why is your beard so nasty? I'm like, hey, I wash it once in a while. I made that one up. Any questions at all? Anything we talked about today? Oh, Mike, great question. He said, I missed it. What was the limit of the architect? Here's the beauty, Mike. the architect has no limit. When you become that fourth level, the sky's the limit. A great example of an architect is Richard Branson. Like, he just has an idea and he's like, let's go do that. Now, are there limits? Of course. I mean, some of his businesses work and some of them fail. But Richard Branson is like the quintessential architect. He just comes up with ideas. He's like, let's go build that. And then he just hires a team and they go out and build it. Caleb said, if I wanted to scale quickly and wanted to follow the magical recipe you provided, what should I do? Great question, Caleb. So I would start by getting really, really ridiculously good at your hard. Like, start there. Like, what is your hard? Is it senior housing? I think senior housing is a great niche right now. Is it self-storage? Development? That's a hard niche, but great. You're going to get really good at, like, from an educational standpoint, really good at it. Like, become the best person you possibly know. Like, there's nobody who knows more about that niche than you. That's a great way to start. Then you're going to start networking with people in that industry, people who are already doing it. And honestly, you're probably going to get a job or a partnership with someone who's doing it at a large level. If you want to skip the introductory stuff and all the beginning stuff, you're going to go become the smartest person in the world. They would be lucky to have you. And then you're going to go and work with them and make them a bunch of money before you go out on your own and do it yourself. Again, who cares if you give away 90% of a big deal, if it means that you're in and you're playing the game. So that's probably the couple things I would do. Tyson said, when hiring, how do you determine the first place to hire, and how can you determine if your business can support it financially? Great question. So there's a great book I will refer you to, and then I'll give the answer. Buy Back Your Time from Dan Martell. That's a great one. His basic advice is you want to buy back your time. So there's two approaches to this, actually. I have actually done both, what Dan says to do, and I've done my own version, and pros and cons. Some people hire from the bottom up. They hire the lowest dollar per hour task that you are personally doing, and you buy back your time. That's what Dan says. And again, I like that model. So if you're changing your car oil, you get rid of that first. If you're mowing your lawn, you get rid of that first. You get rid of all the low dollar per hour tasks in your life that you can get rid of. So you have more time for the high dollar per hour stuff. And you just keep moving up as you hire the job below you. I mean, that means maybe somebody's cooking your meals for you. Maybe that means somebody's driving you to work. Dan Sullivan, who runs Strategic Coach, doesn't drive ever. For like 30 years, he's hired a driver. It's like, he's like, why? It's like $40,000 a year, and I gain an extra 2 hours every day of work time where I sit in the back of a car and I work. It's way better than $50,000. I make way more money by working. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's the mindset there, right? So you hire from the bottom up, and you slowly replace yourself and you start doing higher and higher tasks. That's the easiest way to do it and the cheapest way to do it. The way that I have done it now is instead I hire from the top down. I hire the CEO right away. So I have a mortgage company, Ref. I hired Jason Atwood. He's my COO. I hired one person. He's building the team out. In fact, he's hiring for a couple roles right now. I don't have to worry about all those little roles. I don't even run the company. Like, he runs the company. I'm barely involved. Like, I have a visionary meeting with him once a week where I lay out some vision and he asks some questions and I offer feedback on the website and the direction of the company. Do we want to get into this type of loan or this one? Yeah, half hour a week maybe of talking to Jason. He runs the company. So I built that one from the top down. I built, there's a group called the 50. Some of you might be in it. It's my high ticket, expensive, high level mastermind for real estate investors who are multimillionaires. I've got a group of 50 dudes. We're not 50 yet, but we're getting there. That group, I hired a guy named Matt Francois. He's incredible. He's my COO. He built the company out, not me. Like, I just show up and have a good time with a bunch of multimillionaires and we talk real estate for a couple days every quarter in person. So you could hire from the bottom up if you have less money to be able to put into it, or if you have the ability, whether through partnership or whether through just salary, you can hire from the top down and then align incentives the way I said. So that's kind of how I would look at that. How long did it take you to break through a limiting mindset? Chris, is it Christian? Yeah, that's a great question. I would answer it this way. Like, I'm continually in the process of changing my mindset. because mindsets are so incredibly fluid. Like even from day to day, hour to hour, my mindset can change. Like the mindset of an entrepreneur just goes like this. Like some days I'm just like, I am on top of the world. I am killing it right now. This is going to go great. I'm going to make $1 billion. I'm going to give it all away to charity. And other days I'm just like, this is the worst. I hate this. Why am I even doing any of this? Nobody likes me. Like I go through these, like, it's like somebody called it entrepreneurial bipolarism. And it's like, I swing so wildly and I have to just renew my mind. There's actually a line in the Bible that says like, renew your mind. I think it's with the washing of the water of the word. Is that the line, Carson? I don't remember. It's like you renew your mind daily. Like, because our minds just get warped and twisted. They're just too weak. And so I'm always renewing my mind. And that's why I'm always either listening to podcasts that help my mindset shift. I have a mindset coach I work on mindset with. I've had coaches for years. I read books on mindset. It's a continual process. And probably more than anything else is I surround myself with people that have a mindset that I want to adopt. Why? Because mindsets are what? Contagious. So I'm like, I love the way that guy thinks about the world. I want to get into that room. I'm going on a camping trip with my daughter here next month. My daughter and I are going to the Grand Canyon for a couple days. First trip away from mom. It's going to be great. The thing cost me $10,000 for 3 nights. Camping, you guys, camping. Why would I do that? Because there's 10 other dads going on that trip that are all incredibly successful entrepreneurs and business people, and one super famous Grammy Award-winning rapper that is going on this trip. And I want to be friends with them because I want to think the way that they think. And so I would have paid $50,000. Don't tell the guy in charge. I would have paid $50,000 for that trip because I know that I'll get it out of it because I'm working on my mindset and I invest in my mindset all the time. And so, yeah, I have another trip later with another group that I'm going to, not quite as expensive, but all millionaires. We're going like horseback riding out in Wyoming. Why? I'm doing almost no trips this year away from my family. Why did I choose that one? In fact, literally for my wife's Christmas present this year, I gave her a piece of paper. That was her entire present this year. I gave her a piece of paper and it said, I promise to spend no more than 12 nights away from you and the family all year. And that's what I gave her for her gift because I know last year I was gone a lot just doing traveling stuff. So she can come with me, but like, I'm sacrificing like half of my 12 to go on this camping trip with these millionaires. Why? Because it's worth it. Because I need their mindset. I need to think the way that they think. So, all right. Let's see. What else we got here? Let's see. How do you find off-market multifamily seller finance deals? Great question, Noah. We have not had a tremendous amount of luck with off-market stuff other than off-market broker pocket listings. But that's also because we aim for big properties. Like I said, if you're trying to buy an apartment complex with over 100 units, it's going to be very, 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 very rare that you're going to get an off-market mom and pop deal because most of them are owned by pretty high-level people, investors. If you're trying to look in that like awkward like 10 to 70 range, you will find off market stuff. So it's the answer to that then is you build a massive list. Those are leads. You reach out to them, you underwrite them, you compete for those deals, and you get the keys. So I'll throw it right back on you, Noah. How could you build a system? What system would you have to build to get you one multifamily seller finance deal every single month? What system would you have to build? Let's start with that premise that gun to your head, you have no option than to land 12 multifamily seller finance deals this year. Starting 6 months from now, you got to start landing them. What would you do? You go sit for 2 hours with a pen and paper or a laptop and an open notepad. Dude, your life will change. That's that powerful question. All right, everybody, we got to get out of here. But let me do one more final question. All right, let's do this one. Julie said, how did you originally find like-minded people to surround yourself with in the beginning? I know of our small local RIA group, and that's about it. I love new ideas to meet goal-oriented real estate investors who are also good people. Great question, Julie. In the beginning, I struggled with it. I lived in Grays Harbor County, Washington, tiny little armpit of Washington State. Not a lot of people into real estate. I met a landlord there. He became my mentor. I never said that word to him, but like he just became a friend and mentor to me. But like that was it. There was a couple other people that read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but that was about it. So I found early on, bigger pockets. And I started hanging out in the forums. This is why I encourage, if you're not engaging in an online community, it's better than nothing. Like online is great. Now, the mindsets are still contagious online, but just not as much as in the real world. And that is why, so when I started the Maui Masterclass, and this isn't the commercial for one, because I don't even have that going on right now, but the Maui Masterclass was in desire to get more people together to talk real estate in a very intense setting. That's one of the coolest things I ever built because, the fact that my buddy Cameron, who's now the host on the podcast, flips 100 houses a year, we became friends through the Maui Masterclass. My friend Megan, who's going to be leading a Financial Freedom Hour call here in a few weeks, Megan and I became friends through the Maui Masterclass. Tarl Yarber and I became friends through the Maui Masterclass. 20 to 30 people paid to be in a room. The list goes on. Jay Scott, Ashley Wilson, so many people. I've had 120 people, 130 people go through that. And it wasn't cheap. It was like $10,000 to come out for 4 days. It was a lot of money. What's great though is all of these people almost entirely to a T are still friends with each other. They still do deals together. They talk to each other daily. Some of them still have accountability groups that have been going on for five plus years. Every time I go to, have you guys ever seen me at a conference? Like if I go to BPCon or Limitless or the BetterLife Summit, who do I hang out with at those events? You ever see me around with people? I'm always with my Maui Masterclass people, almost entirely. Wherever I go, I'm with those people because we have it's like we went to battle together for a few days. So get into those rooms. Find ways to get into locations, especially epic locations. There's something magical about going to an epic location. That's why we did Maui. And going, really drilling down and doing life with people. You have to kind of force it. You have to make it, and you have to pay for it usually to get in those rooms. And we have things like the BetterLife, the REI Summit, which is going to be a lot of people. And we will have opportunities in the tribe. We're working on that right now, how we can facilitate better small group stuff. Because I think that's where such value comes from when you're with 30 people at most. I got a house in Idaho, which can fit 20 people. I'm like, why don't I just start doing sessions there? People come out and hang out in Idaho for a couple of days and I'll just teach mobile home parks or whatever. So we're working on that for sure because we want you guys, we want to start doing specialized things. Hey, if you want to learn mobile home parks, we're doing a thing in Austin on this day, show up. And even if you have to pay extra because we have to pay extra to do it, I don't want to lose money because we're all giving it to charity anyway. So even if you have to pay to be in the room, who cares? People spend money on stupid things all the time. So why not spend money on something that actually changes your life? All right, everybody, let's get out of here. I'm going to go to the gym because I got goals and y'all do too. Anybody else going to the gym right now? Maybe I'll see you there. Thank you all for being here. Hour and a half today. I hope this changed your life a little bit. I hope this became a pivot moment for you that 5 years from now you look back and go, yeah, that was when I got the confidence to realize I had the capability to do big deals. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night and go get some. Bye, everyone. And that, my people, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the insights from the episode. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or you enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback and we read your comments to make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people the more reviews we have. And last but not least, please head over to social media and consider friending, following, subscribing, and all that stuff to both BetterLife at BetterLife over on Instagram and my own personal at Beardy Brandon for more. That's Beardy with a Y at the end of it, Beard with a Y, Brandon on YouTube, Instagram, everywhere else. Thanks again for listening. I am honored that you would bring me along on your journey to building wealth without losing your soul. This show has been a production of the BetterLife Tribe, copyright 2024. Our producer is Kevin Leahy with Podcast Point Man. Our videographer and all-around talented video guy, Carson Smith. My co-host is the amazing Cam Cathcart with DealFlowRealEstate.com. And finally, this show has been all about living a better life. But if you want my spiritual answer to what it takes to live not only a better life, but the best life, head over to abetterlife.com/best life. I got a 13-minute special video for you there. For the BetterLife Tribe, my name is Brandon Turner, signing off.